Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Mikey, Stafford here and Rory O'Neill, and the day after the All-Ireland hurling final, and we've been joined by Michael Duignan and Brendan Maher to look back on an historic day when Limerick joined is it now a Big Four? I don't know. They're now only
it's certainly getting there anyway.
yeah. Kilkenny, Cork, Tip, and now Limerick have managed it 3 in a row. Michael, obviously the number of All-Irelands they have isn't quite up there with the Big Three, as they call them, but they're certainly the dominant force in hurling. And when you look at the age profile of that team, you don't see them going away anytime soon, do you?
No, you don't expect. Look, it was. They're a fantastic team, and I think they showed that yesterday. They probably weren't at their best all year, and I think they had injuries all year to key players, particularly Cian Lynch, Peter Casey, Seamus Flanagan had a spell on the sidelines, Kyle Hayes was out for a while. So I think that impacted on their performances. But I think when you reflect this morning and look back to winning on Ireland without the best player, arguably the best player in the country for the last 5-6 years, Cian Lynch, was some achievement. It's very, very difficult to win in Ireland at the best of times, but to win without him. And look, they just really stepped up yesterday, particularly I think and you have to give huge credit to Kilkenny. We all know what Kilkenny are made of, and Brendan knows it better than anyone, been involved in massive All-Irelands with them. But when Kilkenny got that second goal and you say, right, what's going to happen next? And Limerick's response was just unbelievable. And particularly their half-forward line, Gearóid Hegarty, Kyle Hayes, Tom Morrissey, at different spells. Hegarty throughout the game and Hayes and Morrissey at different spells were just unbelievable, and they managed to keep them in the game. With the full forward line were well held, but the 3 lads were awesome. So no, it's a fantastic achievement. And look, you're neutral. I'm a neutral at these, but you do love to see a team like that maybe reaching that sort of a milestone. I think they're a fantastic team. They've a great manager, very modest man, and a low key backroom team, and they just seem to do everything right. And look, well done to them.
Yeah. We'll talk plenty about Limerick here, but I think it's fair you mentioned Kilkenny early on there. And Brendan, I thought it was an astonishing, as impressive a losing performance as an All-Ireland finals I can remember. And I think there's nobody. I think the toughest critic of a losing Kilkenny team is probably their manager, Brian Cody, who wouldn't usually be too interested in kind of looking for any moral victories or whatever. But even he said he thinks every person in Kilkenny should be very, very proud of how that team played. And you can see why he said that, because I don't think there's another team in the country that wouldn't outlast that match by 10 points or more. That's just the fact that they wouldn't give up. The fact that they got those 3 points down the stretch at the end to actually make it a close finish when everybody was probably thinking that game was going to peter out, but Kilkenny don't let games peter out very often, do they?
No, and I was delighted to hear Brian say that, because, as you said there, that was something that might have been lost in the celebrations of Limerick, and rightfully so. But I just thought, even the start that Limerick had, after 10 minutes, a lot of teams, might have been saying, God, we're in for it here now today. And this is another 2020, 2021 All-Ireland, and they might believe that. But in fairness to Kilkenny, on multiple occasions, when it looked like Limerick were starting to pull away, they clawed it back. No pun intended. But, it's nearly a prerequisite now for Kilkenny that they will always show up on the big day. I don't think, you can never accuse them of not putting in a performance, even, the games that we had them, there was always kind of circumstances surrounding the performances. The one thing you're always going to get from a Kilkenny team is 100% commitment, 100% trust in each other and buy-in. I would actually say Limerick, they're the most talented team in the country and probably the most together team in the country. But Kilkenny, I'd say, have matched them for that togetherness this year. And I think that's what got them to the final. You could just see the buy-in that every player had in terms of, this is the way we were playing the game. We work hard for each other. There was no individualism or no egos taking over saying, you have to be the man to take the shot. You see, TJ Reid is a perfect example, ultimate team player. He's not taking shots over the shoulder thinking I have to do this. He's just finding the right man in the right position. And I think that was something that was it's been a mark of all Kilkenny teams, but I think it's something that we should acknowledge in this Kilkenny team to get to where they did yesterday and to put up the performance and put up the fight that they did against this, like what is, the greatest ever Limerick team and arguably on their way to being one of the greatest ever teams in the history of hurling.
Yeah, and that Kilkenny's kind of battling performance, Rory, was definitely facilitated somewhat by your former clubman Colm Lyons. That was that was a referee performance that Brian Cody would have approved of. He didn't give a card, did he? A free was hard won in that match.
No, I don't think there was any yellows. I think I think Colm had a great game, to be honest. I think he blew when it was a proper foul. He blew, but he tried to let it flow. That much vaunted euphemism. I think he did a really good job on that side of it, and I think it's always a good sign on the back of a big game when you're not really talking about them. I think that's usually the adage that attaches itself to referees. If they have a good game, no one notices. And that, I think, is exactly what Colm will take most pride in his performance yesterday, because he got nearly every decision right. He had a good sense of authority. The players kind of knew the terms of engagement. They all went into it with pretty much honest endeavour. There wasn't a dirty stroke in the whole match, I'd say. Was there, lads? I mean, I certainly didn't see one. It was hard and it was tough, but it was all very fair. And it was an absolute humdinger in every sense. And just a word on Kilkenny, and I know we will get to Limerick. I thought they were heroic. I mean, heroic now. I think Brian Cody was right as well, just to echo Brendan's sentiments earlier there. I think they could have, they were 5 points down in the 71st minute and still only lost by 2. It was extraordinary. I think if a lot of other counties, if you're trying to build your team up, if you're a Waterford, a Tipperary, a Cork, or Dublin, and you're saying to yourself, if we can even just match the kind of desire, the kind of togetherness, and the kind of spirit, I suppose, that Kilkenny teams and Brian Cody teams are famous for, it'll take you such a long way. And I think they should be very, very proud of their performance as well yesterday. And I know that's a very mealy-mouthed consolation to take away from an All-Ireland final defeat, but I think they played their part in spades.
Yeah. On Limerick, Michael, Alki Kirkin wrote a nice piece in the Irish Times today about Gearóid Hegarty, kind of saying he shouldn't be as hard to stop as he is because he's so easy to notice, basically. Like he's built like a rugby player. He's not graceful. Like, he says he should be described as a knacky hurler, but when was the last time Gearóid Hegarty was described as a knacky hurler? Because, he runs like, Robocop, etc.
He has incredible skill though. He's unbelievable.
His pickup for the goal, or for his goal, I thought his pickup for the goal and the kind of way he ragdolled Richie Reid was almost more impressive than the shot. But Michael, like, he scored 1-5, and God knows how many assists he got, how many puckouts he won, how many turnovers he affected in his own full backline. It was, I think you said it, and I echoed your sentiments, I think, in something I wrote, is that I don't remember an All-Ireland final performance, an individual All-Ireland performance, quite as, people might be more striking in one element of the game, but it was such a complete performance. He did a bit of everything, and he did everything so well. Yeah, well,
that's not the first All-Ireland he's done that in. Like, no, he's been absolutely brilliant on the big day, and that's what differentiates him, I suppose. And he had a difficult year. He does an odd little thing that he shouldn't do, right? But there's a lot of hurlers you can put into that category. It happens in the spur of the moment. But I think he got a bit unfairly targeted early in the year to send it off.
Would you fall into that category in your playing career, Michael?
I was too clean. But I definitely was. I definitely didn't have an ounce of this man's ability. But like Rory is right. The skill level, flicks, the hooks. But he's a huge man. But he's able to get down over the ball. His mother is an Offaly woman, of course. So there has to be a good connection there, Magella. But he's an incredible player, and I think his work rate yesterday as well. Like the 1-5, he could have got another couple. He assisted on a few, as you said, but the ground he covered. And I think the advantage of being at the match, lads, when you're up where we are, you can see the movement. And like Paddy Deegan got up. Like an interesting stat out yesterday was all the halfbacks scored from play on both teams. Like Kilkenny has got 4. Mikey Carey and Richie Reid got 1 each, and Paddy Deegan got 2. and Dermot Burns, who another man that had a phenomenal game, another massive big day player, himself and Declan Hannon and Dan Morrissey also scored. So because the Limerick half forward line was retreating so deep at times to tackle and to hook and to block, they were leaving their own men sort of free at times, and with the heat out there, the midfielders couldn't close them down. So it looked a bit loose at times, but it was because of the speed of the game, the puckouts. What the puckouts were happening so quickly, so it was almost impossible. But I watched Hegarty at times running off the ball to get into these positions and to create a one-on-one for the puckouts. And in that heat, and he's a big man, like the conditioning was unbelievable of all the players. And that's one thing that struck me about Kilkenny the day of the semi-final against Clare. And I said it after, I never saw a fitter Kilkenny team. And Brendan will tell you, that goes under the radar with Kilkenny. You never hear any talk about the work they're doing to strength and conditioning. But go back over all the years, you never see Kilkenny players going down cramping or anything like that. I thought their use of the bench yesterday, Kilkenny, like they brought on 5 subs, 5 of them all scored, which is incredible. David Blanchfield is going to be a huge player for Kilkenny in the years to come. I think he's in college with my son Brian. They're sharing a house in Dublin, and he's a smashing young fella. And like he came on there, he caught a ball over Hegarty's head, went up the field and stuck it over the bar as well. So look, it wasn't just about Limerick. The Kilkenny's team were brilliant as well.
Yeah, just to go back to Hegarty for a second, Brendan, because you're obviously someone who's shared a field with him on more than one occasion. If not directly picking him up, you've definitely been in his vicinity. As a physical specimen alone, if you don't even count the skill, which we've said he has in abundance, just as a physical specimen, he must be an incredibly difficult person to play against.
He is, yeah. I'm going to take back, Mikey, I'm going to go back to your comment there. Firmly put my Tipperary jersey on for a minute. You said about Gearóid's performance yesterday being one of the best individual performances. I'm going to make a case for 2016 and Jamie Cannellan's 9 points of play. I'm just going to leave that one there.
Fair enough. It was a subjective comment. But no, back to Gearóid. Look, I have marked him. I've come across him the last few years, obviously. What I would say is, I'd love to see his heat map of his movement yesterday. He's probably the most economic mover, if that makes sense, in terms of he takes his breaks and he's not always moving, but he's moving at the right time. If you watch him for puckouts, his timing of his runs for puckouts is impeccable. He's not this fella that's always really eager and makes a run and makes it too early and then is standing still for when he's receiving it. So all of this stuff that goes on that's not seen, I think, is actually what makes him so good. And like you see him popping up in places, he's really good at ghosting. He'll be trotting saying like, I'm not interested, but he knows where he's going and knows what he's doing all the time. And he's trying to find those pockets of space. Like if you look at where he struck his points from, like I know we had the one out over the sideline, like, but he loves picking up that ball on his own 65 and he's able to strike from distance and he doesn't even need the big wind up. He can do it on the run. Just an amazing pair of hands and a massive man, like a massive pair of hands as well at that. Like his pick up for the goal was just phenomenal to do it without breaking stride. So yeah, look, he's a player for the big day. If you look at his performances in the last 3 finals, there's probably been his best performances all year, because look, it wasn't running for him the same way this year as it might have in other years. You know, he had a challenging day the last day, and I think it's a great sign. The cream will always rise to the top, and you see that yesterday with Kyle Hayes, Tom Morrissey, and Gearóid Hegarty, the most important line I think Limerick have, and they delivered in spades yesterday. Kyle Hayes, for me, again, talk about heat maps, he covered some ground yesterday, and I thought it was his best display all year, and had a great game the last day as well, you know. And he had his struggles with his hamstring, I think, this year, and even up until this week, I believe, or last week, he was struggling with it. And you see, he was strapped. It was hard to see it underneath the togs, but he was actually strapped up yesterday as well. So I think he deserves great credit. And Tom Morrissey came up with 2 of the most important scores, I'd say, in the game when Kilkenny levelled.
They were the reaction scores, weren't
exactly.
they, Brendan?
Yeah. From 2 different spots. I think Tom got 2, and I think Dermot Burns got the other one to push him out 3 ahead. Vital timing and just real leadership.
I did a piece there for the Sunday game. I think it was 2018 or 2019. It was the last year pre-COVID, 2019, where I went around the country and got 5 kind of marquee players from kind of a disparate sort of geographical setting. So it was Conor McManus, Seamus Harnedy, Brian Fenton, who else was there? There was Gearóid Hegarty anyway. Oh, David Clifford. We had David Clifford as well. So I had to travel around the country to meet them and film them in gyms and film them just doing some tricks and just doing some basic skills that I was going to kind of piece together as, you know, building it up and teams getting prepped for championship. So we did the piece with Gearóid and UL. And I was out on the fake pitch, and I had my hurley as well. So we were waiting for the cameraman, and we were having a few puck. Now I couldn't hurl snow. I couldn't hurl snow. I couldn't hurl snow off a rope, right? And so I was just kind of hitting the ball at him, and he was saying, "Hit it harder." And like it was just, now you can imagine where I was hitting it, it was kind of popping up left and right. And each time the way he was killing it, the little, like, because he is a big man and you don't associate those little intricate skills with a man of his size, but he's got extraordinary skills. And it was just a pleasure and a privilege to actually be there. And we got chatting as well. And turns out he's a big Liverpool fan and I'm a big Liverpool fan. And we got chatting about that. And a couple of weeks later, I was at Anfield and I was inside in a bar pre-match. And the next thing I saw a fellow walk past me going into the Jackson. I said, "Geez, was that Gearóid Hegarty there?" It was like
you'd spot him anyway.
Yeah, because he's hard to miss. And he came back out and we had a bit of crack. So a thorough gentleman, an absolute brilliant example, club man. You know, I know he's hugely involved down there in St. Pat's below in Limerick. And you know, it's nice when a nice guy, you know, finishes first sometimes, and you couldn't be happier for him.
Yeah. Michael, Brendan mentioned there the importance of Gearóid Hegarty, Kyle Hayes and Tom Morrissey, and like the fact that I think what is it, 113 from play. The astonishing thing about that was you could in no way say that Michael Carey, Richie Reid and Paddy Deegan had bad games. It was an absolute war, that part of the field, and they all had successes at times, but it's impossible to kind of withstand that Limerick tide when it gets going, isn't it?
Well, that's it. Look, it was one of those days. I thought before yesterday that Barry Nash and Diarmaid Burns and Aaron Gillan were sort of three players from Limerick in the running for sort of player of the year, hurler of the year. And it's a tribute to Kilkenny that, like, the Barry Nash didn't get on anything like the ball he normally gets on. They were hemmed in under pressure in the full back line. I said it in the commentary, they looked a bit spooked though at that particular time. Like, they were worried because the goal threat is always there with Kilkenny, particularly the way they were ghosting and drifting off the ball, and they were creating these 1-on-1. So their backline didn't get forward as much as normal. And these three lads were going back and helping them out and then getting forward. So it was an extraordinary performance from the three of them, really. And it was at different times of the game. When we really needed, they came up with the big scores. And you always need a few players on an Ireland day to, you know, particularly there'll always be one or two that stand above the crowd. You're trying to win maybe 9 positions to win the All-Ireland. And I would say most positions were very evenly contested yesterday throughout the field. But Limerick were blessed on the day that they had the three players on the one line that were the most important players on the day. Like Kyle Hayes, to me, is the best 7 in the game. That'd be harsh on Dan Morrissey, but I think if they had a full team, I think he's at 7 now with Lynch at 11, probably Casey in the corner. If they're all fully fit, that's their best team. But it's some tribute to him. And he had struggles during the year. He was in the full forward line. He didn't look comfortable. He was, you know, the old thing in hurling, like some lads are better, you know, when they can get out and get the room and get the legs moving. So he was against Galway. He was hugely vital. Like, they wouldn't have got over the line against Galway only for his 3 points. Particularly late on, he was brilliant. And remember the last ball of the game against Galway, he went back and caught the puck out inside his own square. And interestingly enough, yesterday when they went 5 up, he went back and stood 14 yards from the goals. And in a way, it cost him, because Kilkenny got 3 in a row because he was gone. He was gone out of the ball winning positions. It was him and Hegarty primarily yesterday who won all the possession out the field. But I think at that stage, look, they were saying 5 points is enough for me. But look, he's an incredible athlete, and it's like the sheer size of them, lads. Like it's we can talk about all the hurling and the skill they have, which they have in the condition, but like these lads are 6'7". Like, it's incredible. And for Kilkenny to withstand that for so long and nearly pipped them, for Galway as well, lads. And Galway are probably the team that are probably best equipped physically to deal with Limerick. So While Limerick, you're talking about the age profile. They are creeping a bit up into the 20s. A lot of the players now, there's still loads of mileage left in them, but there's a lot of mileage on the clock as well. So I'd say that Galway will be the team that will be saying, lads, if we can get another 10% out of it, we could have bet Limerick the last day. So I know I'm looking forward to next year already, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah, well, if Limerick carry on this kind of schedule of kind of not bothering too much with the league, sure, they're only looking at a 2.5 month season every year, so these lads could go on until God knows what age.
But who's going to bother with the league now?
Yeah, they have kind of given they've given the template, haven't they? That Limerick. But if you look at I actually very interested in everybody's view. So just for the crack there at the end of the league, and I did it on purpose because I was curious to see what would happen. We did a team of the league at the end of the league. There wasn't a single Limerick, a single Galway, or a single Clare player on that team. Now they dominated the team last night. So if you're all the other counties, you are now saying, forget about the league. Are you?
The other side of Limerick is probably Waterford, isn't it? Where they were absolutely hopping during the league. The league final performance was unbelievable. And then it started to peter a little bit, and they dipped. So it is that whole argument of, when do you want to be peaking? Because you cannot sustain it for 6 months. It has to be. And I think Limerick did that very well and have been doing it well. But in saying that, there's a lot to be gained from getting a bit of success in a developing team. You do need to get that bit of winning momentum and get that kind of get that bit of belief in to say, do you know what?
I suppose it is fair enough. Working. Like Limerick could have they had so much banked.
They know what they have.
So they can afford.
Horses for courses, isn't it, Michael?
Rory, I spent many years on the nighttime Sunday game trying to pick the team of the year, and you were there with me many a night. Remember Gearóid Hegarty a couple of times we had mighty crack, but I just have to say on the team last night, one player, and I'd be interested that I thought couldn't be left off the team.
Mikey Butler?
No. Conor Whelan,
yeah.
My two that I'd be making the argument for was Mikey Butler and Conor Whelan as well.
No, Shane O'Donnell was good, but I wouldn't have Conor Whelan. Cathal Mannion was outstanding. Conor Whelan, that's mother of God, often against 2 and 3 men. He's phenomenal. I couldn't leave him off. Mikey Butler is very unlucky. He was savage, but Whelan for me anyway.
I thought they picked a good team, to be fair, and I think sometimes, as you know, Michael, like how frosty and how tempestuous it can get. You are under a lot of pressure. The All-Star selectors, they have about 10 months to pick the team. Well, in reality, they have about 4 months, right? Like the lads had 4 hours, I know. So you know the stress and the pressure that it's under. So and it is very subjective then as well. But I thought it was a good team. Now, in fairness,
I would agree with you, Michael.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with you though. I was thinking about my team of the year yesterday as well, and I had Tony Kelly out in the half-forward line, and I had Conor Whelan in, and I Shane O'Donnell off. That was my only change. And to be honest, you could make the argument like Sean Finn and Barry Nash have to be on your team.
Yeah.
But you could justifiably put Mikey Butler in there and make as strong a case to say, look, they were all brilliant and we have to pick someone. Do you know what I mean? As you said, it's very subjective, and it's a great sign of the health of the game that we were having this. There was probably, if we're being honest about it, there was some years where lads were getting in, and I might have even had one of them myself, where you're getting in because there was nobody else good enough.
Or they didn't want to pick a team that was 15 Kilkenny men. Or there was years when you could make the didn't Limerick have 14 or 15 of the players of the year last year, the year before?
12 last year.
Or Brendan, you could have been like me and never in there. So.
Well, just to go back to Kilkenny for a minute then, Michael, because talking about subjective decisions, I had the misfortune of, I gave myself the job, I'm the boss, but I had the misfortune of doing the ratings yesterday, which is always a tricky business. You'll always get one bum one, and I think I did a disservice to Hugh Lawler. I only gave him 7 out of 10, which wasn't very fair, I think, considering he kept Aaron Gillane to 3 points from play, and as he is one of the players in there in that team of the year. Again, it's just to make the point that the Kilkenny backs didn't play badly at all, and some of them absolutely shone, including Hugh Lawler. And I said it here on Thursday that I think Brian Cody he had 6 backs now he has a lot of faith in, and I don't think he'd have lost any faith there. And as you said, there's the likes of Blanchfield, who he's obviously kind of, I don't know if he's wrapping him in cotton wool or there was just something he saw that he didn't like as much as he liked in Mikey Carey or whatever it was. But like, he's got options there, hasn't he? And they do look like they're becoming a really kind of properly grizzled Kilkenny backline.
Yeah, well, I agree with you totally. I think up until this year, he was, there was a bit of, I think, a bit of worry about him. Like, if you look at yesterday in the second half, the space that was in front of Gillan and Flanagan, like Graham Mulcahy before he was taken off had drifted out the field. The half hour they were retreating very deep, so it left completely 2 1-on-1s inside with Lawler on Gillan and Tommy Walsh on Flanagan. And Tommy Walsh, again, under the radar player. He did a superb game again yesterday. Flanagan got 2 and Gillan got 3. Gillan showed how good he is by getting 3 points from playing an Ireland final when not having a good day by his standards. But it's still a fair achievement. But Lawler stuck to him. They had no cover, they had no support. And then when Peter Casey came on, Mikey Butler picked him on. I thought the last 20 minutes, Butler, that was his best spell of the game. He was absolutely brilliant then. So they are rock solid. And the athleticism that maybe was lacking in their backline a little bit has now been solved, because like Mikey Carey is a savage athlete. Paddy Deegan gives it everything. He could have he had an easy wide after half time, and Richie Reid had another one. Like they were getting a lot of ball because of the way Limerick were playing. So, a couple of more of them had we gone over, we might be saying today, while the Limerick half hour line played brilliantly, they left the lads to score 6 or 7 points, and that could have cost them the game. But I think Kilkenny, the balance between the younger players starting and the bench that they had really came to fruition. And he waited all year to bring Richie Hogan in. And Richie is, and anyone that knows about him, he's one of the most passionate hurling people that ever played the game. One of the great Kilkenny players. And he's been there all year waiting and never got a minute. And I said it last Thursday night doing the preview, I said, in my head, there's something telling me that Richie Hogan will come on and win the game. And if you remember, Adrian Mullen got a ball in the second half late on. Hogan was inside him. He should have passed it. He hit it wide, actually. Mullen got 3 points. He's a developing player. He's going to be a super player. But I think if Richie Hogan got in that ball, again, these are little things that, I'm not saying to decide all Ireland's, but the decision-making is so important. So I think Kilkenny, look, it's going to take them a while, and the questions will start now. Does Brian Cody come back again next year? Of course he does, as far as I'm concerned.
Unless he doesn't want to.
Yeah, but he will want to. Yeah. I don't think he does anything.
No, I don't think so either. And as you say, there's something building there, without a shadow of a doubt.
But Mikey, just go back to your point about you Lawler, because I've been at that receiving end of trying to deal with that 2-man full forward line against Limerick, and as the ball coming in, it's like in training, if you know the games of backs and forwards, where you literally have a player picking out the pass for the forward, and as a backman, it's absolutely horrible stuff. So I thought, particularly in the second half, when Limerick retreated seriously, when the pressure was coming on them a little bit, their half forward line were very, very deep, and the majority of the time they're out around the middle anyway, to leave that space inside. So like, if you're to try and explain Limerick's system, 8 to 13 is their engine. So from Will O'Donoghue to Graham Mulcahy, those 6 players are in around the middle third, literally working their socks off. And then they leave the 2 boys inside, Flanagan and Gillan, and it's like, let's work our pop passes so we can give a good ball in. And if you imagine, like, you're a full back or a corner back standing inside on the 14-yard line or even deeper, and you're looking out at like literally an acre of space in front of you, and you're saying, like so for you Lawler to be on Aaron Gillan's heels and to get those little touches like that, I thought it was an awesome display now. Just having experienced it and how difficult that is. But again, I'd say, when you say Gillan got 3 points in the first half, you can argue that as well. But anyway, but the second point then is Limerick's half forward line is like the epitome. Yesterday's display was the epitome of the modern day half forward line. They spent most of the time in the middle of the field, or maybe even closer to their half back line, and they scored 113 from play. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
You know what I mean?
No.
But it just goes to show the way Limerick play. They're not compromising their scoring by being more defensive. Like, I'd love to play wing back on that Limerick team, because Diarmaid Byrnes, like, he has his zone and he has the boys working their socks off. He doesn't have to follow a man. When did you ever see Diarmaid Byrnes up in the far half of the field trying to mark a man or defend, on the back foot. Doesn't happen, because he has trust, and that's what I mean about that middle six. They're the engine. They just put pressure on lads, and they trust that they're going to put enough pressure on that it's going to be a 50-50 ball in, and we can eat it up. I mean, it's they're just so effective at it. It's unbelievable. But that engine, that six.
The big difference, Brendan, I think with these lads, say even going back to we actually played our half hour line on the Offaly team I played in the 90s. We actually played very deep as well. But we couldn't strike the ball as far as these lads can. And that's the bottom line. Like, you were getting in maybe for 2 or 3 points. You had a good game, maybe won a few frees, but you had to be getting within 50 yards, 50, 60 yards of goals. These lads are to pop the ball from 100 yards on the run, as you said about Hegarty. So is Morrissey, so is Hayes. Now, Hayes is usually running at the goals when he scores. But in particularly Morrissey and Hegarty, the distances they can strike the ball. So look, I know the equipment is better. I know the ball is probably that bit lighter and better, but the power of them as well and all that. So like it is incredible. And like if one of them had dipped yesterday, Limerick were probably in trouble. It's just it was incredible to see the three of them playing so well. We've talked about, I suppose, a good bit here, but they are the reason primarily. I think a lot of the other players had their hands full on hadn't they? A lot of the Limerick players had their hands full on the day.
Yeah, no, it's as I said, it was Hegarty's the epitome of it, but as you said, Morrissey's points and Kyle Hayes' points, they just, like when they were needed, they were the players who were able to get themselves free despite doing an insane amount of work. We've lost Michael. He'll be back shortly. With hopefully. Rory, a word on Declan Hannon. I was
just going to say,
his history maker in the only man to lift Liam McCarthy 4 times.
What a performance as well.
That's the thing. That's what I wanted to say, was that beyond that, he's just the epitome of calm. He's always there for a pass. He's always manages to get a hurl in, and then he finds a pass as well. And he's just, he's a very unique kind of centre half back, I think.
Did an interview feature with him pre-match, and it was the second or third time that we've done it with Declan particularly. And one of the things that comes across for me, Brendan is, and Brendan would have a very similar aura about him. He's a very articulate, very measured, very clever, very cool and calm individual, really good communicator. He just has leader written all over him, and you can see why I'd say John Kiley said, look, you're going to be my captain, and that's that. And I think his performance again yesterday, how many balls did he win coming down behind him, with that sort of fall back catch that he's almost a master of. And then it's never ever a Hail Mary. It's always right. At one stage he was in the middle of a bit of a war zone. There was 3 to 4 Kilkenny bodies surrounding him, and he just took that extra second, that extra half step, kind of turned away from the play, and he was able to get a lovely little pop pass off, which set Limerick off again. And from that point of view, to my mind, I'd say he's a manager's dream, because when you've got somebody of his ability, because he wouldn't obviously be playing in the team if he didn't have that. But when you've got somebody with that sort of leadership credential, backboning and cementing down that number 6 position, which is still to my mind, still the most important position in hurling. I think when you have someone of his quality and his caliber, I think it's just gold, absolute gold. And he gave an incredible display yesterday. And again, to see him break records and go up and lift Liam McCarthy, and even to have the humility to say, look, I'm going to share this moment because obviously my teammate is missing out on the big day here. It just again spoke volumes for him, and just a mark of the character of him.
Brendan, he comes across Declan Hannon as kind of almost mild-mannered and quiet-spoken, and he's I don't know what, he kind of seems like the good guy among these kind of hard-hitting Limerick lads. But I have an impression that kind of appearances might be a little bit deceiving. That Declan Hannon is well able to look after himself.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think he represents everything that's good about this group, this team. I think, I thought yesterday was probably one of his best performances. I'd say I've seen in a number of years. I thought he was immense, composed on the ball, and struck a great score, as we're
only for Gearóid, maybe, Brendan, he probably would have been close enough to being the top player on display, maybe.
I would have had him up there, yeah. I would have had him up there as a close second when I was thinking about it, and a lot of what he was doing, it was just so simple, but like on the biggest day of the year, he was so calm under pressure. Those little pop passes in traffic, do you know what I mean? And lots of bodies around him. Like, rather than the easy decision to make there is to just release the ball into an area. But you never see him doing that. It's either a pop pass, a hand pass, or a little short stick pass. Always does the right thing. But what I thought he was really good on yesterday, which you wouldn't see, much. I wouldn't see much of it with him, but I thought his tackling and work rate yesterday. I thought he was very aggressive, and he spoke about it in his post-match interview about having more of a focus on the aggression and more of a focus on meeting the Kilkenny work rate. And I thought it was very reflective in his performance. You could see him, he was ready for taking hits, he was giving hits, which you don't normally associate with Declan. Do you know what I mean? But look, a huge honour for him individually. But like when he was asked, I listened to his post-match stuff, straight away he was nearly laughing, like, I don't know how to answer that, lads. He's just so humble and modest. But I have to say, all of the group, when you hear all the interviews that were done, whether it was Gearóid Hegarty, Barry Nash,
and loads of them. That was the other thing that struck me, Brendan. Like, what I love about him is this. Like, sorry to cut across you, apologies, but I do think this is an important point. Like, they've won their All-Ireland, right? There's no managing the message now from John Kiley. Get out there and talk and sell the Limerick message. And you're all well able. You're all really good speakers. You're all very articulate young men. You're all really good ambassadors for your county. You're going to sell the game to the next generation of Limerick hurlers. There's going to be no hiding. No, well, that fella can talk and this fella can't talk. And you can't talk to him. And everybody was available. We were asking, can we have this person? No problem. Can we have that person? No problem. They're fantastic. And I think they're a great lesson as well for how you should manage the post-match in terms of milking it for all that it's worth. Sorry, Brendan.
Yeah, no, but look, I mean, that's it. And they're all great ambassadors for the game. But if you think about what they're talking about, they weren't talking about the great scores that were got or the individual pieces of skill. All they were talking about was the unity of the group and doing it for each other. And if you listen to any interview that any Limerick player does or John Kiley does, all they do is talk about the group. There's no egos there. They obviously have a massive amount of belief underneath it all, which you need. But I just think like they have something special there where, despite Gearóid Hegarty getting man of the match yesterday, he's no different in that dressing room today. Like they all have a massive respect for each other, and they realize that the strength is in the team and not in any individual. And to be able to have that and harness that, it's a hard thing to do. The Kilkenny team had it, but like I was definitely part of teams where we had it, then we lost it, then we had it. You know what I mean? It's hard to get that culture in place, and for that bit of, not a separation, but just when lads kind of start thinking a little bit more individual, where they're getting the accolades, but you just do not see that in any of these Limerick players. No matter how good they are or how many accolades they're getting, it's still always all about the group.
That, Michael, it's very impressive, and also kind of a little disheartening maybe for the rest. I think just looking ahead to 2023, like, do Limerick need to come back to the pack here for somebody to challenge them, or do you think there's any county out there who maybe by next year, having seen another year, Limerick might kind of be able to challenge them, through their own improvement?
Well, look, I think so. Like, you were in injury time yesterday. Kilkenny were, there was only 2 points, pucking the ball in it. Galway the last day, and I think everyone. And
Clare have taken them to the well a few times.
Clare have a way to reserve their best performances for Limerick. So look, I suppose today is not about. They're going to be hard to beat to get the lads back. Keane Lynch. I don't know how bad his injury is, but I think he's going to be out for a while. That's what they're saying. So that's going to have basically a year off for him from hurling. So he has to come back from that. Peter Casey will be stronger next year. Cathal O'Neill will be stronger as well. But I do think they'll probably need, what every team needs is, you'll need 1 or 2 players pushing the lads that are starting for their jersey. That's what Kilkenny were brilliant at with the great team. They always had somebody coming to put the pressure on. So that'll be interesting to see. I suppose, I'd always be trying to learn about teams, and just it's very interesting to hear Brendan talking about the lads there. Like Declan Hannon wasn't always like that. He didn't have that belief. when he was younger. Remember, he started out in forwards. He had a tough time. I was talking to Eamon Cregan last Friday at the All-Ireland Hurlers President's Prize Golf Prize was on, and Eamon was there, and I don't see Eamon that often anymore. And I won't go into the conversation because some of it was private, but he was talking about Declan in school, and he had him in Mary I, and the way he developed, and like Eamon Cregan is regarded as maybe the greatest Limerick hurler, one of the greatest Limerick hurlers of all time. To see the regard he has for these people, because Eamon would be a tough taskmaster in terms of getting that respect, whether that was with Offaly or any other player. But the regard, the way he spoke with was incredible to hear from someone like Eamon Cregan, the type of person that he is, the type of captain, the example he sets for the whole county, as John Kiley does as well. So that's hugely important, Rory, to go to your point about those lads being out there talking. Like it amazes me to be taking your top players away and not giving them access to the media. Because I even see
certainly now anyway. Like, you may as well, go milk it for it's worth.
But these guys are very well educated, very very sound fellas. But Declan Hannum would have worked, I think, very, very hard on the mental aspect of his game. Caroline Currid, who I don't know, and Brendan, you obviously do. She had such an impact with yourselves, I know, over the years. And I know even Gearóid Hegarty last year spoke about some of the one-on-ones that he did with her as well. That has really, really helped her. And we never had that. So I'm speaking from a blank void here. We had no sports psychology in my time. I often think back, and some of the lads I played with, and maybe including myself as well, at times you'd be doubting yourself, and that was a big thing with me, that I always kind of felt I was I really good enough to be there, and you had to deal with that yourself in your own way and build yourself up, or else you couldn't perform at that level. You couldn't win all Ireland unless you solved that. But I think that she has to play a massive part, and I think that whole group thing is very much driven. John Kiley is that type of man, but I think she has a huge part to play in that, Brendan. And I say, maybe, look, you know her a lot better than
she's a bit of a mysterious figure. Like, she doesn't like to talk about herself. We know that, Brendan. We've tried to get her to do an interview a few times. She doesn't like it, but I've never heard anybody say anything but magnificent things about her.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what she wants to create in terms of her influence and impact. She's not in it to get the name on the paper, shall we say, or do you know what I mean? What she's really good at, I think, is just having those open conversations. She was massive in terms of my own individual development. I would have met Caroline first in 2009, so my first year on the panel. And you're trying to break onto a team. There's a lot of doubts will creep in when you start facing the standard that is intercounty senior hurling, and a bad game can have a huge impact on you at that age. But she was really good for the younger lads, and I think she's also really good. She was really good for the older lads that might have had maybe some of the scars of the years before as well. And being able to bring that together then, where you have the freedom of expression of the young people being advocated and embraced. And then the older lads try to feed off of that and realize that, like, the past is the past, lads. It's all about now. And I think if we hear, again, go back to the way they talk, if you listen to what they talk about, they don't reflect. They literally, it's very cold in the way that they talk about previous games, and it always seems to be like next game, next training session, and they just have these messages that they're hammering home. And if you heard Caroline's interview last night, I was surprised, to be honest, to see her sit up there and speak. I think she was, I'd say, dragged up, because I think Paul Kinnerk refused to go up, and Caroline, they managed to get Caroline up. But like she said about reinforcing and re-encouraging the group and the whole culture of the group. And that is, she's just an advocate of what John Kiley wants to bring and is bringing. And I think when you have those kind of figureheads sending a message out, and Declan Hannum would be part of that then as well, and Cian Lynch as captain and vice captain, like, it has to be led from the top. And it's a simple message, but it's consistent. And Caroline is consistent in the message that she gives you. And I think that just kind of creates that belief, creates trust amongst the group. Like, many times I heard them talk about the bond that they have, and they're all brothers and we trust each other, massive belief in each other. Like, that's something special to have, because if we're all being honest, the teams that we've been on, you might have it with a group of lads, but like, it's very rare you're able to go into the throes of All Irelands like that and just have absolute belief in every person that's on the pitch. And we've seen the evidence of it. Like, Conor Boylan stepped up yesterday, Colin O'Neill come on, and you could just see they come on.
David Reedy,
David Reedy in the semi-final, unbelievable. Like, and you can just see it. They don't need to talk about what they're doing. it's very simple, the messages that they seem to be given to each other, but they go out then and they just act on it. And it's great to see. I think it's something we can all learn from.
Rory, there's a professional quality to the Limerick setup, and I suppose it's something gets mentioned. It doesn't get mentioned much. It tends to be kind of the divisive thing when you mention his name, but like the influence that JP McManus has had on the GAA Limerick is huge. You get the impression it's not just financial. Obviously, financial helps a lot, but there seems to be kind of a sharing of expertise and just kind of the whole culture that he brings into it. But we know now for years that being successful at an inter-county level is a very, very expensive business, and different counties have different manners of funding themselves. But for Limerick, they seem to have, and I know a lot of his funding has gone into the underage and the academies, which Anthony Daly has told us many times are a huge part of the success. So it can't be underestimated, the kind of the financial backing there as well, can it?
Yeah, look, but I think, to be fair to somebody like JP McManus, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael may know more than I do on this, but I think JP McManus has been pouring money into Limerick GAA all across the board, going back to the 70s, or certainly since he first managed to earn a few quid for himself. Like, this isn't something that's been happening last week or the week before. He's been, and there's been plenty of Limerick teams down through the years and lots of eras where Limerick hurling wasn't as successful as it is now. I think what you're seeing now is the bearing of fruition of a lot of really good people that they've got into really good positions all across the board, and they're all singing from the one hymn sheet, and they're all in unison together. And when that happens, it can be a very potent mix and very, very difficult to stop. And I think from JP's point of view, I think, look, I don't necessarily see finance as being a stumbling block for any of the major intercounty teams. If you look at across the certainly the 10 that are competing in Liam McCarthy Cup level, and obviously Antrim are coming into that mix now as well this year, for 2023. If you need money, if you're one of those big counties and you need money and you need a budget, you'll get it. You're trying to tell me that Cork, for instance, or there's not money in Tipperary that they couldn't go out and tap, and like there's money there if you need it, but it's just how you spend it. And there's already money there. There's plenty of big budgets in all of these other counties. They just spend it really well. They've got a brilliant management team. They've got one of the best coaches probably that's ever been in terms of Paul Kinnerk. He's an absolutely fascinating figure. I go to, it hasn't been held now for a couple of years because of COVID, but I go to that Games Development Conference every year in January. It's always in Croke Park. It's interesting from my point of view, from a work point of view, but I'm also from my own club's point of view, just to sort of, there's a lot of ideas thrown around there, and you kind of get, it's a sort of a melting pot of coaching practices and techniques and different ways of doing things. And there's like a big culture mix there, and you might learn something, you might learn nothing. Invariably, you pick something up. But 2 years just before COVID, one of the reasons I said I'm absolutely 100% going was Kinnerk was the guest speaker on the Friday night. So he gave a lecture for an hour, and I'm not joking. It's online, actually. It's up there online, and it's well worth watching. Man, like firstly, how giving he was. There was none of this, well, I'm not telling you any of my secrets here. Like, no, he didn't go into, the minutiae and the very, very small detail, but he threw some things out at the crowd, a very simple little technique. I remember him saying, with the standard coaching routine that most coaches will employ is they rock up, do a bit of stretch, do a few drills, and then break into a match. And he said, why don't you start with a match? And I was kind of going, Jesus, I never thought of that.
Rory, one of the players, right? And this was over a few drinks, and
it was so simple and stupid, but I was like, yeah, Jesus, that's a really unusual way of looking at it. Sorry.
So someone was trying to kind of get at, like, what kind of training are you doing, or what's the style, or what's all this tactical stuff? And the player in question was like, I don't know why people keep talking about this tactics. Like, all we do is possession games and shuttle runs. That's all our training is. Possession games and shuttle runs. That's all we do.
But I think, exactly. And I just thought what was interesting from his point of view, I think, and the point he was trying to make, I suppose, with that, just as a simple little example is, and I think that's probably the genius of Kinnerk. I'd say when they go into training each night, I'd say there's always something new, and there's something small, a little bit of a difference there, and he just keeps them thinking. And I'd say he's a brilliant player to play, or brilliant coach to play under, because I'd say, he's a fascinating character anyway, as all the Limerick management team are, including John Kiley. But I find him a very, very interesting figure now in all of this.
Yeah, they do. From Kinnerk to Currid you know, to the academies, Michael, they do seem to have things in very good order. And obviously, I know in your own neck of the woods, you know, with Faithful Fields, and you know, kind of getting kind of the kind of expertise and financial contribution from the likes of Shane Lowry as well. You're looking to achieve that. Are Limerick now, you know, the Dublin footballers were taught about for years as kind of the gold standard. Do you think Limerick GAA is now kind of the gold standard of how you should look to set up for intercounty success?
Well, it's all down to people. I think just on JP's role, like it's an open secret that 5 or 6 years ago or sometime around then, he brought the county board out to Martinstown, and I think they were more or less told to get their house in order if he was going to continue being involved. And John Cregan came in as chairman. John was a TD. He was actually chairman of the football board for quite a while in Limerick. And John is an absolute gentleman. Michael Reardon is the secretary. They call him Spike down there. He's a very determined individual, to say the least.
He's a good character, Mike. Jeez.
He gets stuck in on the line now to get stuck in. And they do, to take Rory's, but they do huge fundraising outside of JP. I don't know how much money JP, but like Club Limerick is very well established. To have, you know, they have their different structures in place. But I think JP McManus and the academies, then the way they're structured and run, Joe McKenna, who's a great friend of JP's, is involved. So I think it's the money. I think it's the way they're looked after. They don't have to think about it or worry about it in terms of the players. And at the end of the day, we're talking about all this support, but at the end of the day, it's about the players. And you know, Paul Kinnerk can be the best coach. The same, like they are incredible hurlers. These are once in a lifetime, like that Kilkenny team. Brendan would have played with a number of players and his great Tipperary team that are just different. They're just different, but they have so many of them. And that's where Kilkenny at their peak, they had all-stars in their subs. Now so do Limerick, you know what I mean? And you're playing without players of the year and all-stars, and you're still winning All-Irelands. That's a massive level. And it's how you get there. And not everyone is going to get there, but you have to try to do things right. You have to try to get the right people involved, and you have to have them everywhere. And that's the difficulty in an amateur organisation, I see as chair of NAFI, is to get enough people around your setup that are of the standard. We all know the type of people. First of all, to identify them, find them, get them involved, and then mold it all into the one process is very, very difficult to do. And they've done it. But to answer your question, look, other counties they're not going to start out the year saying Limerick are going to win the All-Ireland. There's going to be half a dozen counties next year that will believe at the start of the year that they can lift the Lee McCarthy next year.
Yeah, Brendan, it is finish up now in a second. It's funny, when you were playing Tip, you were the standard bearers for Munster hurling and for, you know, hurling in Ireland for quite a while. Like, you know, there does seem to be a bit of a gap forming between Limerick and others, and the challenge is there now for Tipperary and whoever their new manager is to try and close that. But it's as significant a challenge as Tipperary hurling has had for a while, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I do think, look, obviously a lot has gone on the last couple of weeks, and we could comment on the way that was dealt with, and you know, that's another conversation. But ultimately, the decision has been made now, and we'll have a new man in. But what I would say is, like, I don't think we're as far behind maybe as this year has shown. Yeah. I think there's still a lot of talent there. There's still a lot of good fellas there,
and some coming through,
as well. Yeah. So I would hope, you know, that we can get that structure and the right people in place in the background to start pushing this thing on again. I hate going back on the last 12 months, but like, there was very early on, there was worry, you know, in terms of the
lose Kerry in the old way.
Yeah, like you could see it, and you could see the lack of belief in players then, and you talk about that unity, you could start to see lads were starting to mind their own house, and that's never a good sign. So hopefully, we look over the next 6 months, I think a lot of work has to go on. But, you know, I know Michael won't comment too much on it, but you can see the impact that you have had, Michael, in what you've done in Offaly and the teams you're starting to produce now. And it just goes to show, when you get those people in place and you get the structure in place, it's not just about the resources and the financial contributions, it's people, and it will always come down to people. And like, I'd love to know who are the coaches that are not being talked about in Limerick that were part of that academy that had these players at 14, 15, 16, because they're all products of.
Well, Joe
of the
McKenna, I think Joe McKenna had a huge influence. Did he, Michael?
He was involved in the structure of it. Leo O'Connor, our minor manager in Offaly, Leo was very involved with all those lads. He was actually talking about Declan Hannon to me as well. He said the first day he came in for trials at under 14 or something, there was a big gang coming in, and some lad hit a ball, kind of a stray ball like a rocket, and it was going past Hannon. He just flicked the ball into his hand, and he says to some of the lads, he said, unbelievable piece of skill, because the ball wasn't meant for him, it was going 20 yards further. And he says to one of the lads, who's that? And they said, it's Declan Hannon. And he said, right. He said, put him on the list. He's top of the list. But Leo was involved. Yeah, Brendan is right. You see, you have to think outside the box some of the time. So there are people there that can assist. I think I'm not going to say anymore.
Yeah, I can't let it go, Brent. Am I to take from what you said there a second ago that you wouldn't be overly impressed with the manner in which Colin Bonner was, as they said, relieved of his duties?
Yeah, look, I thought it could have been handled a bit better. But in saying that, look, I mean, two of the management team left. I heard a lot of unrest amongst the players in terms of the standard of the setup and that, and it's unfortunate the way that it's all panned out. But ultimately, I suppose the people involved felt a decision had to be made, and it was made. And look, I think everyone involved was making it with the right, I suppose, intentions in mind. The way it was carried out maybe could be argued, but ultimately, the decision, I suppose, was with the right intentions in mind. And look, I don't know Colin Bonner that well, but I know he's a massive hurling man, a massive Tipperary man, and it's unfortunate that this has happened, but I don't think it should tarnish his reputation anyway. And he has come out and he has spoken and talk about being open with media and that, like, he was fierce open this year, very honest man. And I think he has been consistent with that even post what happened last week. So huge admiration for him in that sense. And whoever will come in, I mean, obviously there's leading candidates and that, but next few weeks will tell a lot. I just think that it's not just the manager that needs, that needs to be sorted out, like, or that needs to be replaced now. There needs to be a full, right S&C, your Caroline Currids of the world, all of these people that work in the background are massively important. And if you don't have the right people involved in those positions, then the culture of the team and the performance of the team ultimately will struggle or suffer. So there's a lot to be done. But look, I would still be optimistic that Tipperary hurling can still be competitive and we can build over the next couple of years.
Right. So our hurling final preview podcast started with Tipperary, and our hurling podcast review podcast is ending with Tipperary. You can't get away from them. Limerick may be kingpins, but Tipperary are still dominating the conversation. And
you'll all be cutting the heads off each other in club championship now over the next few weeks, I'd imagine, Brendan.
Yeah, starting this weekend. So games are Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. We're out Saturday evening against Thurles Sarsfield. So big one,
interesting one.
Enjoy it.
Indeed.
Thank you to Brendan, thank you to Michael, thank you to Rory, and we'll be back on Thursday, myself and Rory, that is, to preview the All-Ireland football final. Coming thick and fast. We'll chat to you then. Good luck. Bye.
From this, how much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last two matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.